Hey everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Notcast. This is, I think, number 191, and today is the 10th of April, 2022. I will be talking today about my relationship to one of my favourite albums of all time. It is the Manic Street Preachers' Holy Bible album. And if you know, I started off doing, an album by album talk through of Manic's albums a few months ago. It's paused for a bit because I do the records when I feel like talking about them and not to a strict time scale. Besides, this isn't really a business. This is me doing things for fun. Although this episode may not be fun because this album is dark and heavy and dank and miserable, and it is almost misanthropic in its casual and cruel dissection of the hypocrisies of modern life. That sounds very much like you're going to be sitting there going, hey kids, have fun listening to the Nine Inch Nails telling you about how everything is going to be absolutely terrible forever. But it isn't. It's the Holy Bible by the Manic Street Preachers. It is their third record. It's a record that's incredibly important to me. It came into my life at probably the exact right moment that it needed to, and it stayed with me ever since. So we start off with this record. Is I saw the Manics 3 times in 1994. The first show was the Leicester de Montfort University on the 26th of January 1994, where they were in the midst of the tail end of their Gold Against the Soul tour. And at that point, I was like, are they going to become just another band? Well, that was when the band really started to change. So they had the whole of the stage set up with camouflage netting. They came on board to sirens and military garb, dressed in almost like a military unit. So the band were dressed as if they were on the offensive. And the show that night, which most of it, by the way, is on YouTube, was a really strong, powerful show. As if the band had realised they'd gone a bit too far one way with Gold Against the Soul, almost doing a course correction. Like every record is the response to the record before it. And it was an incredible show, powerful, vibrant, furious, on the offensive against a reality that failed to meet the band's expectations. And all of a sudden I would kind of realise that, well, something was going on here. The band had changed. And then the second time that I saw them was at Brockwell Park in London, supporting the Levellers at an anti-racism show. It was the first time that I think they played Faster or P.C.P. from the Holy Bible live, and it was the first time that I saw the band in the third era, so to speak. It was only 50 minutes. It was in the middle of the afternoon. It was like 4 o'clock. There was 100 and something thousand people there. The band were tiny specks, about 200 yards that way. I could barely see them, but they were fabulous. In fact, what nobody ever really talks about is just how good a live band the Manics were. They may very well still be fantastic live, but they were phenomenal, and they were on fire. And the first single that was released from the album, which was released a couple of days, I think, after the Brockwell Park show, was this Faster, P.C.P., a double A side, the first song from the album. And right from the moment you first heard Faster, and you thought, oh, something's changed. So Faster is probably the best single Manics single song that there is. I mean, I prefer Motown Junk, actually. But we're not talking about what I prefer. We're talking about what objectively. If someone said, well, what do you think kind of represents, pure, undiluted form, concentrated Manic Street Preachers in the 90s? And you go, well, it would be Faster. And Faster is song 9 on the album, but it opens with a quote from 1984, the film made in 1984, the voice of John Hurt saying, I hate purity, I hate goodness, I want everyone corrupt, I don't want virtue to exist anywhere. And then all of a sudden the song takes off, and it sounds like it's a jet engine taking off. So the music for the whole of the Holy Bible album is a substantial move forward from Gold Against the Soul and Generation Terrorists. It's a combination of magazine and public image style post-punk, but updated with a fierce sheen, a sound that sounds very much like someone had taken the sound of stadium rock and Guns N' Roses and then turned it into, a modern updated version of an 80s hardcore band from Los Angeles. A band that, instead of inarticulately screaming at you, was able to lay out a lyric of such complexity and density that even now, 28 years later, I can't believe it's 28 years, I'm listening to these songs and I'm finding new things that are in the songs. So the lyric to Faster is I think a real pivotal centre point of the band's existence and the band's body of work. So much so, I'm going to take this CD out here and I'm going to quote you some of the lyrics to explain why I think this song works so well. I mean, for me, Faster at least is a song that's around a number of things, but I think it's really about a loss of innocence, a loss of purity, a loss of a loss of almost naivety, because there's a lyric in there around, I am stronger than Mensa, Miller, and Mailer. I spit out Plath and Pinter. I am all the things that you regret. The first time you see yourself naked, you cry. Soft skin, no acne. Foul breath, so broken. And there's a number of other lyrics that go through the rest of the album. One of the key centre points around the Holy Bible, I think it's a really brilliant album, is that it's around reality and adulthood and the loss of innocence, and the naked lunch moment, the moment when you see what truly is on the fork and you're not looking necessarily at a bit of meat. What you're actually looking at is cooked animal. And the Holy Bible, in its very essence, even the name of the album, the Holy Bible, kind of indicates that the band is saying, look, this is our manifesto, this is our truth, this is our reality, this is our world. So it really is the gospel according to Richie Edwards, I think, probably, although that's probably more words than you would necessarily want on the front of an album cover. Faster is very much, the first song that introduces to you the core tenements and ideas behind the whole of the album, which is about the corruption of adulthood, the corruption of capitalism, the corruption of being old, the corruption of having to be an adult and having to coexist in a world that you're surrounded by people that you don't necessarily like or respect. And certainly when it came out, and I was 21 when the album was released. The album was released on the 27th of August 1994. I was just entering the world of work. I was just in that transition phase from leaving university to going towards having to get a job, having to interact in a society which, to be honest, I didn't like. As an adolescent, and certainly as a young adult, I really disliked the world that I was living in. I felt like I'd been parachuted in, like a character out of a video game, into an alien environment with no map, no guides, no instruction manual, no cheat codes, and I had to somehow kind of interact and work my way through that reality without getting caught. Now, I've heard, well, some people have got the theory that I might be autistic or something like that, and I don't know whether that's true. I've not had any tests or anything, but certainly what I have felt, certainly as a younger adult, is that I was a secret agent undercover in a world that I didn't like or understand, and I had to somehow pass the test undetected so that I could blend in. And there's an element of kind of masking and hiding and all that type of stuff. And I was talking on Twitter earlier on today with a friend of mine around, like how we didn't like necessarily being on video or presenting ourselves and doing YouTube things, and how, I mean, I don't like my face or my hair or my body or my voice or anything, but I'm powerless to change that to a lot of extent. So I then kind of have to accept that this is who I am, and it's not self-hatred as such. It certainly isn't. It's more around going, well, I can't control this physical manifestation of me apart from things like, well, do I shave or not shave? Do I have laser surgery on my eyes or not? But it's around understanding that there are things around this reality that, in my opinion, are very suboptimal, that we don't necessarily fit into the world the way that it wants us to fit into the world. And Faster as a song, is the first song is very clear on that. The first time you see yourself naked, you cry. Soft skin, now acne, foul breath, so broken. The idea that growing up and entering puberty or becoming an adult and stuff is that you're corrupted, you're broken. The thing that you thought you were is no longer anymore, and you now have to interact with and you don't have a choice about it. you become somebody that you don't necessarily want to be. And then there's another line in there, one that really kind of resonated with me, which is sleep can't hide the thoughts splitting through my mind. Shadows aren't clean, false mirrors, too many people awake. If you stand up like a nail, then you will be knocked down. I have been too honest with myself. I should have lied like everybody else. And a large number of the songs that are on the Holy Bible kind of address in detail things like depression, anxiety, mental illness, anorexia. And to some respects, I'm always reminded of Will Sinnott from The Shaman, who was a qualified psychiatric nurse, who said, actually, the people that are insane are probably the people that got the best grasp upon reality, because the character of the society in which we lived, and probably still do live today, if you looked at the personality traits of living in capitalist Britain in 2022, you might actually be convinced that if capitalist Britain was a person, it would be a psychopath. It'd be devoid of remorse or integrity or honesty or conscience, and that a conscience was a pest, and it was a thing which really only worked to belittle and beleaguer other people. And the true people, the people that are really the people that succeed, are the people that don't have a conscience because they behave and think in a different way. Tiger blood, winning, those type of things. But also that line about sleep cannot stop the thoughts splitting through my mind. I have insomnia. I've always had insomnia. I've always had an unquiet mind. It's always been very, very difficult for me to get to sleep and to stay to sleep and then to wake up in the morning. And those type of things were not really talked about or addressed when I was younger at all. I thought I was weird and wrong and broken, and that nobody else experienced these things. And it's only, with the advent of things like social media and forums and Twitter and so on, is that it's become a lot less lonely if you have any of these issues. I mean, certainly at the time, 1994, mental illness, depression, and anxiety were things that people never ever discussed. There's one of the tracks on this album, 4 Stone 7 Pounds, is around somebody who has anorexia and effectively starves themselves to death. And it was something which was never addressed in a song. It's not really. It certainly wasn't addressed in popular culture. There was no TV documentaries about it apart from one. And it was always seen. People didn't have the tools to understand things like depression or mental illness. If you had a mental illness, people's automatic assumption was that you were, you saw, shapes and talked to gravestones, because that's what what's his name, the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe, said. He said that the gravestones told him to hurl to prostitutes, and he was mentally ill. So if you're mentally ill, then you must have, drinks must talk to you and things. And it's like there was no tools to understand what was going on. The world's a lot more understanding, I think, now. There's still some stigmas around it, but the world's a lot more understanding now around it. But the whole of this album really felt like a comfort to me, because it started to talk about subject matters and things which popular culture was terrified of and didn't discuss. Things like, a sense of misanthropy, a sense of thinking that, capitalism was fundamentally broken. The idea that adulthood was corrupting, and that, that you could dislike your own body or your image or anything about the world in which you lived in. And so for me, I thought that the album was and is incredibly important in understanding the reality which we had. I mean, to me at least, it was almost like a political manifesto, but it was also a statement around the structure and the way in which society had been built. And it was kind of like almost laying out a map and said, look, this is reality. Reality is really weird and wrong and different. And it's a deconstruction of, I think, capitalism through exposing its flaws and hypocrisy, and it's a deconstruction of what it's like to live under immense pressure, some of it which was real and some of it which is imaginary, that exists only in your mind. It's one of the most important albums I've ever heard, the Holy Bible, and it's one of my favourite albums of all time. And we've only got to the first single, Faster. There's another 12 tracks to go, so we might as well get cracking and go through those. So on the album, here is the 20th anniversary box set version of it that was released in 2014. It's probably better if I kind of open this up and we talk about the LP version of it. It came out on the 27th of August 1994, this album, and I bought it on the 27th of August 1994. It was a bank holiday. It was the day after the band had played the Reading Festival as a three-piece, and I needed to get that album into my head as soon as I possibly could, because I knew it was going to be important. I just knew from Faster, I knew from P.C.P, I knew from Revol as well, that it was going to be an incredible album that was going to be a friend for mine for a long period of time. Now, the second track on the first single was P.C.P, the last track on the album, which means that when you heard the Holy Bible for the first time, the last new song that you heard, track 12, was the intense humming of Evil. You already knew what P.C.P was, and you knew how P.C.P was going to end. Now, I changed the running order of the album. I'll put my preferred running order of the album down there in the comments. But P.C.P closes on a speech or a line from an interview with an actor who said 227 years, and I can't forget, or I can't remember the first line, which is here, and that is an actor who played King Lear 227 times, and he couldn't remember the first line. So the PCP, ended on the idea of someone facing the end of their time, unravelling, and literally losing their marbles. And it's a powerful song. Not my favourite, not one that I can talk about for a huge amount of time, but it's powerful. Now, the second single that was released from the album, this is a little bit better for you. Hang on, I need to go and get my copy of the single, actually, from over here. The second single released from the album was Revol. Here is the 10-inch single of Revol, I think. And Revol is, in my opinion, a grossly underrated Manic song. It's kind of like a crossbreed between Love Sweet Exile and maybe something like P.C.P. It's a very, very political song, and actually Revol is if you look at the words lover, Revol is lover spelled backwards. You look at the imagery that the band were using at this point. They were using reversed R's, by the way, on a lot of things, on a lot of their text. So it made it more obvious that that's exactly what the link was. But it's a super dense track. It's got a lyric around politics and power, and your relationship to politics and power, and how power is sold as something that's sexual. So there's a line about Mr. Lenin awaken the boy, Mr. Stalin bisexually, Pop Khrushchev self-love in his mirrors. These are dense lyrics. These aren't song lyrics like I love you, I miss you, baby, go away, or whatever. These are song lyrics that are trying to decode reality and express to you complex ideas around the nature of fame and celebrity, selling politics as a celebrity of itself, as a form of power, as a form of attraction, and everything that goes with that. It's a really deep, dark, dense lyric, and there's also a line that's in there which when translated becomes really, really bizarre. And I think probably the best thing to do is for me to say if I can find the lyric in here, and then tell you what it is. So there's a one about Lebensraum, Culture Kampf, Ras, Fehler. And the use of Fehler is not unintentional. There's a baseball shoe company called Fehler. I'm obviously far too old and unhip, so I don't necessarily know what that is, but it's like Lebensraum, living room, Culture Kampf, culture war, Ras, and then Fehler, which translates as, and this is where I have to go and check something on the screen over here. So the lyric translates as living room, culture war, out, form a line, and that ties in with one of the other things which comes in the album. Which is there's a couple of songs which are very, very specifically about the concentration camps in Auschwitz, one being the intense humming of Evil, another one being Mausoleum, and it was a visit that the band made to the concentration camps from the Second World War, and the impact that they had upon that. So there's a line in one of the songs around no birds, a holy mass of dead insects. The idea being, and so it's heard, I've not been there, is that when you visit one of the concentration camps, is that there's no bird song. Birds do not fly over the ground. That land is cursed in some way. It's almost unnatural land, and that's where it comes from. And you kind of go, Jesus, this shit's heavy. Now, that's even before the album has come out, we've already got to that kind of stuff. Is the album was bizarre, strong, spiky, weird. It was very aggressive, actually. And the first song on the album, as I said, the album came out 27th of August 1994, bank holiday. First track on the album is Yes. And it's a super, super dense lyric. I think it's around the appearance of compliance. Actually, yes, and I don't think it's a coincidence that actually, if you look at the sign for the yen, the euro, and the dollar, that spells out yes as well. And I think there's some imagery which the band had done, which kind of used that iconography and those fonts of those currency symbols as well. But yes is a dark, dark song. The opening line is, for sale, dumb cunts singing same dumb questions. And it opens with a quote from a documentary called, I think, Hookers, Hustlers, Pimps and Their Johns, which was on television in 1993. I remember watching it around prostitution and following around prostitution and sex workers in, I think, New York in 1993. And the idea being is that, with yes, it starts off, the idea being very, very clearly is that actually, employment in capitalism is very much the same as sex work. It's about somebody selling their body and their talents in order to create low labour and money. A line from This Is Yesterday also says the only way to gain approval is by exploiting the very thing that cheapens me. And that's a line between Yes and This Is Yesterday. The idea that you sell your labour in a capitalist system, and it's hypocrisy if it's actually if you think about it carefully, is that you are exploiting your talents and your skills in order for survival. It's in a bartering situation, and Yes also has a really powerful lyric in it around dignity. Around the line where it goes, puking, shaking, sinking, I still stand for old ladies. And for me, there's the line directly before it as well. I eat and I dress and I wash and I can still say thank you. The idea being that even though everything else is awful, you are forced to cooperate inside a broken system to pretend that everything is okay, and to work through that and stand and wash and dress and clean yourself when sometimes that's not what you want to do at all. There's no space for weakness in some forms of capitalism, because people mistake your kindness for weakness, and they see weakness as an opportunity to be exploited. And it is a very powerful lyric. Yes, it's also a fucking great song. The way in which all of the music works on here is that I do not know how James Dean Bradfield was able to fit the meter and rhythm of all those lyrics into those spaces, almost as if somehow there were 2 or 3 vocal lines running at the same time. I don't know how someone can do it. The music reflects the claustrophobia of the songs, the lyrical claustrophobia of the songs as well, in a way that's very disturbing. There's just any one of these lines I could probably write 4,000 words on, but I wouldn't really. Yeah, and then the last line of Yes, I mean, it's one that still haunts me. It's these sunless afternoons I can't find myself. If you've experienced, depression or anxiety or difficulty with reality, and don't forget, by the way, that if depression can sometimes be a completely appropriate response to really, really difficult circumstances. It's not a personal failing. I was talking to somebody who's a professional in that area, and they said, actually sometimes, a response to that, the only appropriate response to some of the traumatic events that you may be experiencing is, a depression or some form of mental illness. It's really heavy, and there are sometimes the sunless afternoons where you just sit there and you go, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I am. I faced a point in my life where I had to step back and ask myself some questions around, well, what do I want to achieve with this life? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do for a living? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to love? What do I want to be? And those are really difficult. If you can't find yourself, is that there's still this sense of doing things without a purpose, is getting up standing still, standing for old ladies on the bus, washing, cleaning yourself, eating, saying thank you. All those things, they're rituals. And if there's no purpose behind them, it's really, really difficult, I think, sometimes to go, well, what's the point of this? What is the point? And so, yes, being the first track on the album, it's phenomenal first track. And the second one on the album, by the way, is If White America Told the Truth, Its Whole World Would Fall Apart. Very possibly the longest song title in the history of mankind. And of course on there, it's all one word, no spaces. And White America, because what this album does is it picks up multiple themes and it plays with them continually, and it runs through each one of them. So the themes are, mental illness, depression, anxiety, capitalism, culture, and your place within the world. And If White America Told the Truth, Its Whole World Would Fall Apart, again another super dense lyric. It's one that I can't even begin to understand in any way, although it does have a line about the Zapruder assassination. So if you think about this, there's a line in there around, if Zapruder was the first to masturbate, then Zapruder was the guy that shot some of the little, I think, 8mm footage of the JFK assassination on the 22nd of November 1963. And it was a thing that changed the complete concept of how America works, I think, the JFK assassination. And it was kind of alluded to elsewhere, is who killed JFK and what did they do and how did they do it? And of course that's one of those things that they make movies about now, but they don't give you the answers for. And so it's really, really difficult, I think, to look at that and go, well, what are the answers? And now the answers were, if they wanted to, they can kill a president, they can kill anybody. A human life is by itself, practically worthless at this point. And it's a lyric which ties in things like politics. So you've got the politics that's in Revol, the politics that's in If White America, the politics that's in songs like Mausoleum, Intense Humming of Evil, all together linked to also capitalism's way of misusing and throwing away human beings as discarded trash when they reach the end of their natural working ability to be exploited. I told you this was a cheery episode. And it all kind of comes together, really. Third track on the album is, I need to check, is Of Walking Abortion. That cheerful number, which I saw the band perform at their headline festival appearance in 1999. 99. Now, the concept of Walking Abortion is that the X and the Y chromosomes are the ones that make the difference between male and females. And if I remember correctly, the male chromosome is the Y chromosome. And therefore, a man is actually an incomplete woman from a biological and DNA point of view. I ain't getting into trans rights and turf politics, by the way. None of that is. But that's the theory which underlines the song. And it opens with the lines, life is lead weight, pendulum died, pure or lost, spectator or crucified. And it doesn't get any happier from there, by the way. It really doesn't. It's, the second verse goes, Mussolini hangs from a butcher's hook, Hitler reprised in the worm of your soul, Horthy's corpse screamed to million, Tetsu revives at the horror of a bullfight, fragments of uniforms, open black ruins, a moral conscience, you've no wounds to sew, so wash your car in your ex-baseball shoes. Again, drawing a line between this and Revol by mentioning shoes, but also ex-baseball shoes being a Malcolm X kind of branded baseball shoes, because we're not that far away from it. Everyone's got a t-shirt of Che Guevara apart from me. It ain't too far to go into having Malcolm X baseball shoes, and no doubt Joy Division oven gloves will be following shortly after that. There are, of course, Joy Division baseball shoes, by the way, which when I saw them at the auction, I was like, my God, I can't believe someone actually made those things. Fourth song is She Is Suffering, the third single from the album, and She Is Suffering is, for me at least, one of the best songs that there is. I first heard She Is Suffering on an appearance on MTV's Most Wanted before the album came out. They went on and they did an acoustic version. Actually, no, they played She Is Suffering at Glastonbury, and it was on the television, and I recorded the television broadcast from Glastonbury. So Sheer Suffering is the the second song from the album that I heard, because they hadn't played Revol at that point. And I thought this was the Sheer Suffering, the third single from the album, the last single released during Richie's participation as a member of the band. And as you can see, this copy has a hole cut through it. It's a deletion hole, because this single did not sell a huge amount of copies. This one was about 50p long after it came out. It's probably about 30 quid now on Discogs, so I have no idea actually. But Sheer Suffering is one of my favourite kind of songs from this period. It's a song that I don't think gets anywhere near enough respect as a song. It is powerful and it's compelling. And I need to mention, by the way, that there are two versions of the album. There's a UK version of the album, which was mixed by, I think Mark Freegard, and there is an American version of the album, which was mixed by Tom Lord Alge. And the American version was released. It wasn't released in America. A number of copies were pressed. It was released in Canada in early January 1995, but it wasn't released in America because Richie disappeared on February the 1st, 1995. And so therefore it wasn't released because the band didn't go and do their American tour. So it was withdrawn. Some copies were sold. This is an original Canadian copy of the alternate mix of the Holy Bible. The last time I looked, this was selling for hundreds of pounds. Although since the American mix was reissued in 2006, the price has come down. But it has a different version of Yes on it. It has a different version of Sheer Suffering on. And there is a quote at the beginning of Sheer Suffering which says, "It is impossible to achieve the aim without suffering." The idea being there is that whatever the work is, a woman's work is never done. The work and the goal, you cannot achieve that without suffering. And suffering is in that context, then, in the song Sheer Suffering, regarded almost as work, as suffering as a byproduct of existence. It's inevitable and it's inescapable that suffering will happen. And also kind of ties into things like childhood trauma. There's a line about life's lukewarm pleasure, which is the very last line of the song, and the one about love being the great redeemer, but also at the same point, life's lukewarm pleasure. The idea that maybe if you've fallen in love and it's unsatisfactory, is the love which is held up in culture to be the great redeemer, the thing that you must believe in, the thing that makes sense. Love conquers all, and you kind of experience it. And my first relationship was a bin fire of idiocy, not on my part, by the way. But then you watch that, and you see that, and you experience that, and you go, if that's the greatest thing, sometimes it's a really destructive, powerful force, a really negative influence that insidiously kind of tears people's souls apart. So She Is Suffering, the third single, that's a nice, happy tune for you, but it's a very important song in the band's discography. And then the fifth one being Archives of Pain, which immediately follows the She Is Suffering. Here is the booklet from the 20th anniversary edition of the album, and if I remember correctly, no, I definitely don't. I was hoping that the lyrics would be in there so I could talk them through you. They aren't, so I'm going to have to go back to the lyric sheet. Now, there was also a 2-page centre spread advert in the Melody Maker of the lyrics for the album. Oh God, I wish I'd kept that and framed it, but I know my brother has done that, so good move there, Graham. But Archives of Pain kind of, I think, opens with a statement from an author. I can't remember who it is now, but I think he says he wanted to rub the human, he wanted to rub humanity's face in its own vomit. And I'm like, well, you're really making it very, very clear there what you think of the album. Or is it Archives of Pain that has? I think Archives of Pain opens with a quote from somebody who has the mother of one of the people that was killed by Myra Hindley, actually, which is that you damn well think you're God or someone. I don't think you're God. I think you are the devil itself. And the idea is that you will be buried in the same box as a killer. A drained white body hanging from the gallows is more righteous than Hindley's crochet lectures. Pain, not penance, forget martyrs, remember victims, the weak die young, and right now we crouch to make them strong. It's a dark, dark song about human nature, the dark side of human nature, and the way in which people can be unspeakably cruel to other people. And the song kind of draws itself to a tragic ending, around giving the killers the respect they deserve. The implication being clearly that there's no respect there. There's no lust in this Kioma. We have Revol, which is next. Obviously the second single from the album. I should show you more things. There's a one-track CD of Revol. Here's the CD single there, backed with Too Cold Here and the live version of Love's Sweet Exile. And then we have the live CD of Revol, which is back with 3 tracks from the Glastonbury Festival: Roses in the Hospital, Druggy, and You Love Us. And then we've got Force Down 7, which I've mentioned previously. Force Down 7 is the first song I think that really discussed, anorexia as a mental illness. I remember it opens with quite a dialogue from, I think, Caroline Neville Lister, I think is her name, a woman who starved herself to death, and there was a documentary that was shot by the BBC which followed her towards the end of her life. And the opening line is, I think it's something like, "It hurts too much to live and not enough to die." And it's something like, "There's not enough to live and too much to die." And it's an awful. I mean, I remember watching that program, and the skeletal shape of a person as they were starving their own body into submission. The idea, the ultimate withdrawal, or the ultimate power that anyone has, the ultimate sanction is withdrawal, and that was the sanction that they were taking, is that they were removing themselves from a reality. Now, whether that was, for whatever reason that might have been, the reason might have been that the reality that they were forced to exist in was one that they couldn't bear, the one that they couldn't tolerate. But it was, oh man, heartbreaking to watch. It's probably on YouTube. I'll find a link to it. Please don't watch it. Really upsetting. And then track 8 is Mausoleum, which is also about death. So we've got a common theme that runs through Archives of Pain, Revolt, Force Down 7, Mausoleum, around death, murder, politics, self-image, identity. And Mausoleum is a song around a visit to, I think, Dachau, the concentration camp in Dachau, and the experiences that they had there, in a place where effectively mass murder became an industrialized production line set up by a psychopathic nation. William Friedkin, the director who did The Exorcist, has a theory that actually in the period about 1936 to 1945, that Germany as a whole was subject to a case of mass demonic possession because of what happened in that nation. And there's some validity in that kind of view, really. Whether it's true or not, you can understand how it works. And on the lyric booklet there for Mausoleum, what you can see alongside the intense humming of evil, the two songs are very closely related. That is the gate that says, I think, Arbeit macht frei, which I think is work is so it's slavery, work is power, and work will set you free. Work is freedom, and that, I think, is some of the maps there from one of the concentration camps. And it's just really dark. We get to track 9, which is Faster, which I've already discussed, which again is unambiguous. And then we get to track 10, This Is Yesterday, which was the lyric to This Is Yesterday was written by Nicky Wire. And if I was to get a Manic's lyric tattooed on me, it would be from This Is Yesterday. It would be, "Do not listen to a word I say, just listen to the things that I can keep silent." As an adult, and I've kind of touched upon this earlier when I was talking about when you're a secret agent behind enemy lines in a reality that you don't understand, when you're existing in a world, sometimes you're taught that silence, you have to be quiet, you have to be compliant, you can't be saying the things that you want to say, you have to kind of detail that, and then you kind of just listen and go, just listen to what I don't say. I'm forced to exist in a world that I don't like, to sell my labour, to generate money, which is not necessarily something which I feel fully comfortable about. And it's a song that, to me at least, describes, I think, depression and the struggle with a reality that is suboptimal in a more articulate way than any other thing I think I've ever heard, actually. And then we have Die in the Summertime as track 11, which is wanting to die in the summertime. It's a hard song, man. It's a really hard song. It's got a lyric about a tiny animal crawls into a quarter circle, clean air, so serene. If you really care, wash the feet of a beggar. And you sit there and go, these are not your standard rock lyrics at all. This is somebody that's facing the reality and staring it down and going, you are, reality is not sufficient, it's not good enough, it needs to be better. Then we have the intense humming of evil, which is I saw them play it live at the Wolverhampton Civic Hall. I saw one show on the tour, at the Wolverhampton Civic Hall, 8th of October 1994. Sleeper were supporting, and I didn't realise that would be the last time that I saw Richie alive. And it was an incredible show. It's not sold out. I remember you could see the sweat just, it was so hot in there that it was causing condensation and its own weather inside the building. I remember when they did 4 stone 7 pounds, I went round the back. There was a bar at the back of the stage, and I got a glass of water and I sat there and I watched them do 4 stone 7 pounds, and I was like, I still remember that to this day. An incredible live show. But it was almost as if the band was burning too bright and too hard, and they couldn't last for forever. So they played the intense humming of evil. Let me just quickly check. Here is the set list, stage use set list. Wolverhampton, the intense humming of evil there, number 7. Just after La Tristessa Gerera, just before a walking abortion. And every one of the set lists on that particular tour had a quote on them. This one had a quote from Napoleon: "Nothing great can be done anymore." So these were originally handwritten by Richie, then photocopied and put to the stage, and this is one of the ones that was used on the stage. And then obviously P.C.P was the last track on the album, which was around political correctness. So the whole thing is an album. It's a treatise that goes through multiple different themes, one of which is around capitalism and culture and selling your body and your labour in order to maintain your financial and physical security. One is around politics and power and the use of power and the way in which it works. Another one is around humanity, how bleak and dark human beings can be, around industrialised murder, around the power and politics that goes with it. So there's a lot of very complex messages in this album, and it's a heavy listen. It's an incredible album, but it's heavy. It's really heavy. It's really hard, and it was really a friend to me at the time when I was 21, 22. I listened to it a lot in the period just after my mother died. I was trying to make sense of what was going on, because people say everything happens for a reason, but then sometimes you go to it and go, what is the reason? And the reason doesn't make sense. And sometimes things don't happen for a reason, or they happen for reasons that are inexplicable, and the reason sometimes is just because things can happen. The album was lauded and very heavily appraised critically. It was completely out of step with the world of Britpop when it came out. I mean, look at that. That's about as far away from Parklife as you can get, isn't it? The four of them, they look like they're going to invade a foreign country. And perhaps gain dominion over a small island and set up the People's Republic of the Manic Street Preachers. That is not what the rest of the world, because everyone else was Damon in a tracksuit, jumping on about your Versprung Dirt technique, and all that knees up, core blimey, Mother Brown. That was not where I was. This was where I was. This was what I was feeling. This was how I was seeing the world. A place that was fundamentally cruel, unfair, unfeeling, and trying to make sense of everything that was going on around it. The album had another single, She Is Suffering. This is the European release, which has a acoustic version of She Is Suffering recorded for MTV on it. Just before the album got released in America, there was a 6-track promo with a unique bit of cover art taken from the tour. Man, what a fantastic picture that is. Again, mixed by Tom Lord Alge. And then there was a 10th anniversary version released in 2006. This features the album plus some live tracks. The live tracks I think were recorded in Cardiff and Portsmouth, and a US mix, the US mix on the second disc, alongside some demos and a Radio 1 session of Walking Abortion, She Is Suffering. And yes, there was a 4th track recorded at the radio session, which was on an evening session compilation CD, but it's also on this bootleg CD for real, and that was a cover of Nirvana's Penny Royalty. And that was recorded by, I think, the 3-piece version of the band whilst Richie was on medical leave. The DVD that comes with the 2006 edition features some TV appearances 4 songs live at Glastonbury and Revol live at Reading, and a band interview. 20 years later came the 20th anniversary box set, which I've shown you the booklet that goes with that already. It has the album and the US mix. It has a CD3 of B-sides, CD4 live in concert at the London Astoria, December 1994, the last Ritchie shows, and a Radio 4 session with 4 songs recorded in 2014. This version came with the LP in a gatefold sleeve. So the LP sits in the front part of the gatefold sleeve there, and then you've got the gatefold version opens out with pockets to hold the 4 CDs in, and the version of the lyric gatefold, which was on the newspapers. There was also a picture disc version of the album that was released in 2015. The US mix was released as a picture disc. If you've got to get the vinyl, the US mix is, in my opinion, absolutely definitive. And there was also a promotional 12-inch that was released. This was later released on our record store day, called Done and Dusted. This was released in late 1994. It had Chemical Brothers remixes of Faster and I think La Tristeza Gerera on as well. And this is a rarity, but it was repressed and reissued for Record Store Day. Finally, I bought the tour program on the tour, and this is got some fantastic band-approved imagery and ideas in there. Look at that, that's gorgeous, isn't it? The Holy Bible is not a record that should be listened to. It is a work of art, a sonic work of art. It's one of my favourite albums of all time. It was a friend when I needed one. It helped me understand the world and the way in which the world worked. It spoke to me in a way in which very, very few bands or records ever did, and it's incredibly important to me as